Hello everyone, welcome to this edition of Iredell-Statesville Schools EDTalks. Our guest today is Kim Busch, who is a teacher at Lakeshore Middle School. Hi Kim, and welcome.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, this has been a long time coming. We've been very excited about getting you on the show. You have a reputation as being a stellar teacher in our school system, and so it's a great honor to have you here. And tell our audience a little bit about your history as a teacher and the various places you've worked and your pathway to the Iredell-Statesville schools.
Wow. Well, this is my 30th year in education, and I love it, and I will do it for many more years. I don't plan on ending that anytime soon. I always wanted to be a teacher, always. I grew up in Orlando, Florida, and went to University of Central Florida. And I think one of the biggest impacts for me in continuing to follow my dream to be a teacher was hope. Hope has always been sort of the central focus for me, and being a hope developer. I think, faith, hope, and love, we talk about those things and share those with those around us. But I think as a teacher, being able to share with kids that there is hope, that in a lot of situations, your circumstances that you're surrounded by don't allow them to define you. You define your circumstances. And that's hard for young children to understand, but continuing to be that person that says, I believe in you. And I think especially when children are elementary school, I've taught elementary school and I'm now teaching middle school, and I think it's really important in middle school because many kids are searching, who am I? What am I going to be? Where am I going? And I think that idea of hope and letting them know that there is someone who believes in them is really key. Like I said, growing up in Central Florida, and this was BD before Disney, when Walt Disney decided to come to Central Florida, it was such an impression on me because here was a man who had this dream, and a lot of people thought he was very Pollyanna. And I connected to that because I remember someone saying to me one time, you're such a Pollyanna. And I was like, okay, I got to think about that. I had to look that one up. And it said that Pollyanna is being sort of illogically optimistic. And I thought, well, okay, sometimes in education, I think people on the outside would think, yeah, this is illogical, this can't work. Some of these situations, these kids that come to us, how can they possibly, make it? But I think as a teacher, I'm glad to be a Pollyanna, and I hope that I can continue to do that. I know in my own life, great, examples of that I think about, and you've been in my classroom, you saw the chair that I took from my my elementary school. And my elementary school, this was back in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, when integration was occurring in Orlando. And my fifth grade science teacher, Mr. Charles P. Bailey, was a Tuskegee Airman during World War II. And he entered the classroom after his service, and I was blessed to have him as a science teacher. And he didn't talk about it often, his service, but when he did, the stories that he would share, and kids would ask questions, well, how did you feel about having to sleep in different barracks and use a different restroom, and you couldn't eat in the same cafeteria? And he said, well, I was there to do my job, and he said, I always had hope that things would get better, And so again, that idea of hope came up again, and he is certainly someone that I always strive to be. I mean, he was a great example of, he had a lot of peace, a lot of calmness about him, and he would come in and teach us great things. He had a passion for what he did too. Right. And like I said, the stories that he shared really were all about hope, about hope. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, as a parent and a grandparent, I hope my grandchildren's teachers believe in hope. That's well said, and that is really the glue that holds all of this together, is hope. Yeah. Kim, we have undergone a lot of changes in the last few years here in North Carolina as it relates to education. There's a lot of people reforming education now. And I've talked to a lot of teachers who have said the job's getting a little tougher. We're starting to feel like there are people in positions of power that don't respect what we do. I wonder if you could give us a snapshot of how things are out in the trenches and how's the morale with teachers, and is this still a profession that we can recommend to the next generation to go into?
I think certainly I would recommend it as a profession if it's something you believe in passionately and something that you know you want to do. And I believe that there are people who still have that passion and really want to make a difference. And I think that there's no better place than in the classroom with our children, where we can be that light and let them know that there is hope. I think certainly that morale is definitely something we all are very concerned about, and people going into education and the numbers dropping in the universities and colleges across the nation, people not wanting to go into education. Respect, teachers certainly, that idea of respect and not being respected by some of the things that the legislators are different things that are coming out of our government. Things are difficult right now. I think that we can continue to work towards that idea of do this for our children. Oftentimes, and I know you've said this before, we want to open our doors and let these people come into our classrooms. And I think the key is not to see me, because it's not about me, the teacher, it's about the kids. And I think that if lawmakers had to look into the eyes of our children every day and hear their stories and see where they truly are, it may change their hearts and minds about some of the things that we're doing. And I don't know that I can quote this as eloquently as my husband, who's also a teacher and inspires me every day, and he teaches U.S. history, advanced placement. I know you've had conversations with him, and he said, Thomas Jefferson said that our country, if we want a free country, we can't have an ignorant country. People need to be educated, and one of the things that we need to continue to do is to offer public education. That's important. We need to make sure that we do that to remain the strong, wonderful country that we are,
Right.
That American exceptionalism, we need to continue to do that. But I think sometimes people who are making the decisions and the laws are removed from the classroom, and that's understandable. I mean, they are. I know even, like I said, I've been teaching 30 years, 4 years I served as an administrator, and I was making decisions. I didn't have my own classroom at that time. And sometimes I would sort of catch myself and think, I have to remember what that was like being in the classroom. And it is difficult when you're removed from that day to day. But again, having some of those folks maybe visit the classrooms, not necessarily to talk to the teachers, but talk to the children, look in their eyes, see where they are, see those kids who on Friday go by the office to get the bag of groceries. Talk to those kids who are coming to school who put their head down on their desk, not because they're apathetic, but because they're tired, because they've been up all night taking care of younger siblings. Children who've had their water turned off. And we're talking about, things that children are dealing with across economic, lines. I mean, there's lots of things that our children are dealing with that people just can't even imagine. And as teachers, we see and we hear those things. And like I said, I think if many of the people, the decision makers, were having to look in the eyes of those children, it certainly changes you.
Right, absolutely. I know we've talked before, Kim, about it's certainly important for teachers to know their content knowledge. It's really important for them to understand what good instruction looks like and the mechanics of teaching a lesson and whatnot. But there's another component to this profession too, and it's the heart, developing relationships with children. And you've been masterful at doing that. You told me a story one time about a student of yours, Devin. And I wonder if you could share his story. You had him in middle school, he's now in college, and one of the intrinsic rewards of our profession is developing these lifelong relationships with our students and following them well beyond our classrooms.
That's
but
right.
Share Devin's story.
I think that is the greatest gift as a teacher, to be able to see these young people meet their dreams and goals and see them through. And I always tell my students, I'll be following you. You may not see me, but I'll be your person following you and thinking about you, and if you ever need anything. And Devin certainly is one of those students who oftentimes in sixth grade would come to school very tired, and was very bright. I could tell from the first day that I had him, a very bright, articulate young man, but would come to school very tired, sometimes wearing the same clothes over and over again. And so I pulled him aside one day and I said, what can I do to help you? I know I can see you're tired. And as the weeks went by, and we developed that rapport and that trust, because ultimately with teachers, it's developing that trust. We say it's a sacred trust. It really is, because it's something that, as a teacher, I hold that near and dear. When you develop that rapport and that trust with a student, that that's a great gift, that they trust you, and that they're going to share something they don't ordinarily share with people. And he began to share his story and some of the difficulties that he had at home. No water, no electricity. He was most concerned for his younger siblings, and stories that would bring a tear to my eye. And when I remember one day when he was telling me about finding his grandmother, who he loved and cared about so much, he and his brother were watching cartoons, and he said, I went in and she had overslept, and she had passed away in her sleep. And I couldn't contain myself. And he's like, I didn't mean to make you cry. I said, oh, Devin, I said, I just appreciate you sharing your heart with me. And like I said, over the course of the year, he would share stories with me. And I remember one time, the thing that really stuck with me is I said, how do you come to school and do the things that you do? I said, I can look at your scores and see that you get, top marks across the board. Math, ELA, everything. How do you do that? And he said, well, Mrs. Busch, I kind of compartmentalize. And this is sixth grade, 12 years old. I kind of compartmentalize. When I'm at school, I do my school stuff. And when I'm at home, I deal with my home stuff. I was like, wow, just an amazing, amazing kid. And I said to him, Devin, I know that, again, your circumstances are so difficult. But oftentimes when things are like that, and I said, I don't profess to even begin to grasp what you have to deal with. I said, but knowing that our circumstances don't define us, who we are and our character and who we might become, let's define your circumstances. Let's look down the road. What is it that you want to be? And he looked straight at me and he said, I want to be a pediatrician. And I said, wow. I said, why do you want to be a pediatrician? He said, because I want to take care of the children. He said, I don't have that right now, and it's a great concern, and I want to take care of children. And that just blew me away, that at age 12 he could verbalize that. And I said to him, at the end of the year, I said, I will be following you. I will be following you. And the following year, he did, that we all got together. Seventh grade is when they give out the STARS Award. And he was the recipient of the STARS Award scholarship, so that once he got to that level of applying for college and everything, there would be additional money there for him. And over the years, we stayed in touch sporadically, back and forth, and he had to, his, again, parental situations, father had been incarcerated, stepfather, mother, back and forth, difficult situations. And he had to move to Yadkin County to stay with some relatives there. But this was when he was in high school. He wanted to continue to go to South Iredell High School. And so his senior year, he had borrowed a car and was making that trip down to South so that he could graduate. Now, his scores, he was National Merit Scholar. You're talking about, those kind of scores. That's his SAT scores. And I think I shared with you his essay that he wrote. His essay, and he shared that with me. And I had asked him, I said, can I share that with people? And he said, sure. He never thinks, he's like, why would you want to share that? I said, because it's amazing. And it was about, the question on the SAT was, should character education be taught in schools? And his essay focused on that absolutely, because there is no one more influential than educators and the people at school that can let you know that there is hope and to believe in yourself and that true character. And in his essay, he said, sometimes kids don't get that at home, and school is the only place where they might get it. And when he shared that with me, again, tears, and he says, there goes Mrs. Busch again, But again, that's the great gift. And I said, you're going to apply for college. And he said, I'm working 2 jobs right now. I don't know, what do I need to do? I said, we're going to get this done. And so our media specialist, who is amazing, Mrs. Milliken, had Devin in Battle of the Books when they won many of their competitions. And so we got together, and he calls us his duo moms. So we got together and got the application process going and took him on some college trips just to kind of expose him to what that would be like. And one of the letters that we wrote landed on the desk of one of the administrators at UNC Greensboro. And when we took him on his college tour there, we were about to go into one of the rooms, a meeting room, where they would talk to us a little bit about what it was like to be a freshman. There were some ladies standing there, and they said, "Are you Devin?" "Yes." "Could we speak to you for a minute?" Pulled him over to the side, and we sat down at a table, and they handed him a letter, and it was a $60,000 scholarship, the Blue and Gold Scholarship. And because of his work, and because of his character and his belief in himself, they wanted to offer him that full scholarship.
Wow.
And he just looked at it, and he looked at Miss Milliken and I, and of course we're both crying. And he kind of, what should I do? Sign it, But it was just, and he thanked us, and we said, no. We thank you for giving us this opportunity to be on this journey with you. It's a journey. And that's really what education is all about. It's a journey with these kids and to see what they become. And he is now, going into his second year at UNC Greensboro. He also, we had sent letters to everybody, and at UNC Chapel Hill, one of the main administrators there, admissions, contacted Devin and wanted to meet him in person. And he said, "I know you've already accepted at UNC Greensboro, but I'd like to speak to you personally." And Joan actually, Milliken, the media specialist, drove him up there. It was during school one day, and she was able to get away and drove him up there. And I remember him texting me afterwards and saying, it was in a very dark paneled room, and there were lots of books, Mrs. Busch. You would have loved it. And he spent an hour with this gentleman, and he said to Devin, because of who you are, he said, just know that the door here at Chapel Hill will always be open for you. And when you want to seek your graduate studies, please make sure you come back and speak with me. And I understand you would like to eventually be a pediatrician, and we would definitely like to speak with you about that. And he just, just couldn't believe it, and again, sort of incredulous, like, why would they want me, and that's just the kind of student he was and kind of person he is. But again, those are the gifts, and that's certainly an amazing story of a child here in Iredell-Statesville schools that touches your heart, touches your life, and really reminds us why we do what we do.
Yes. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It also speaks to the mission of public education.
Absolutely.
The old tagline that the public schools give every kid in the county an opportunity. That is so true.
Absolutely.
And I think, going back to Thomas Jefferson, he a lot of folks don't know this. He was also the chairman of the Board of Education for Washington, D.C. A strong believer in the concept of free, appropriate public education for every child. And that's why I have enjoyed my career devoted to public education, because it reaches out to every child in the community, and those Devons of the world get their chance.
That's exactly right.
Yes, exactly, absolutely.
Right. Yep. And I am certainly a product of public education, and knew that that's always what I wanted to be a part of. And I even married a teacher, so there you go.
It truly is a noble profession. Yeah. Well, Kim, let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
You are a teacher leader in our school district. You're a risk taker. And so you're engaged in a project this year. There's a handful of teachers across North Carolina that are participating in what we call a proof of concept study.
Yes.
Testing has been a hot button issue across North Carolina for many, many years. The EOGs and the EOCs, the end of grade, end of course exams. And there are folks, and I think rightfully so, who question, are we testing kids too much? Are we testing too often? And so what we have tried to do is to go back to the state of North Carolina and say, let's take a look at how we're administering our assessments to kids. And so the study that you're conducting in your classroom this year is taking the end of grade test for English language arts, and rather than giving a great big giant exam at the end of the school year, they're taking that same exam and they're breaking it up into 4 chunks and administering that to the children quarterly. Now, our hypothesis was that would be a much better way to administer a test to children. It would give you feedback early in the year so that you can change your instruction, and that kids would perform better if they had the chance to break that down into bite-sized pieces.
Absolutely.
So give us a little update on how that's going in your classroom.
Well, at the beginning of the year, when we found out we were doing that, and that was before the students began, I was a little nervous. There are only 35 sixth grade classrooms, 35 schools that are participating across the state. And when I began to look at it, I think what was exciting to me was, as you said, really kind of breaking it into 4 pieces rather than having that marathon test at the end, breaking it into more manageable chunks. The way I set up my classroom is really sort of based on the coaching model. And that coaching model, thinking about athletics, really. Athletics was always a big part of my life. And some of the great teachers that I had were teachers/coaches. And the idea being that they formatively assess every single day. I still have that coach in my ear when I was playing, whether it was basketball or rowing in college, saying, pick it up, do this, do that, and roll it off your fingertips, giving you all those little tweaks and hints along the way to make you better. And I felt like with the proof of concept, applying that, it would work perfectly in my room because it goes along with my concept of formative assessment. And rather than waiting till the end of the year to have that huge marathon test, smaller tests throughout the year. And granted, we certainly give, those CFAs, common formative assessments and things like that. But this was something where we could really begin to measure against other classrooms in the state, too, to see how we were progressing. So we began the year, and as I do with my kids, we talk about teamwork makes the dream work, however Pollyanna that may seem, but yes, teamwork does make the dream work. And that we would operate as a team together this year. And part of that was daily, I would give them feedback. How are you doing? Where can we improve? What do we need to work on? What do we need to do better? And I said, I'm always giving my kids analogies, and the kids know, we're going to have another, athletic analogy. Yes, we are. Yes, and they love it. And I said, my husband was a football coach for many years, and every Saturday they would spend hours looking at game film. And I couldn't imagine how many times they had to run back and forth through the different plays and have to look at it. But it was because they wanted their players to become better, and they wanted to really analyze, look at that and see what they could do to help them become better. And I said, that's what I want to do for you. I want to see where it is that we can kind of tweak things so that you can be successful and meet your goals individually. And I think that's the key too, is personalizing it, not just the classroom as a big group, but personalizing it and individualizing it and getting right down to the nitty-gritty with each student. What did you do here? What could we do better, for you personally? And so the proof of concept, when we took the first one in October, one of the things that I told the students, I said, the great thing is that rather than take the huge test at the end of the year, we'll take smaller ones, 20 questions throughout the year. Well, that was very exciting to them. And that, I think it's all in the way you sell it. I hate to use those words, but it's sort of how you build it up and how you explain it in class. And so I kind of sold it as this is a great big game day, and we're going to show what we know and prove that we know these concepts so far. And I said, we're not going to know it all because it's only October. We've got a long road ahead of us, and we'll learn it by the end of the year. So again, when the scores came back, we, as a class, as a team, we analyzed the data. The kids, I always have them look at their own individual scores, and we kind of mini conference together after they go back and make some test corrections. What did you notice that maybe you could have worked on a little bit more? And it's always funny because kids will come up with the funniest things. I should have trusted my gut, one of them said. And they said, I went back and changed it to the wrong answer. And another one said, I misbubbled. I bubbled it right in my test booklet, and I bubbled it wrong on the answer sheet. But these were great conversations because I said, those are things we'll remember for the next time too, So throughout the year, I think the proof of concept has been met with great positivity, both with the students and the parents, and certainly I'm a fan of it because, again, it's giving me great information and a great insight as to where my students are. And it gives them that insight of where they are. The parents have completed surveys and sent information to NCDPI, and the information I've gotten from the parents is, again, they're on board with it. They said that's great, rather than have that huge test at the end of the year. Because particularly with ELA and reading, as teachers, sometimes we said, gosh, it just seems like the EOG is more testing their reading stamina, which certainly is important,
Yes.
but it seemed more that it was testing their reading stamina rather than their skills, certain skills that we were covering during the year. So that certainly has been a very positive thing, and I would definitely put my vote behind doing proof of concept going forward for sure. Yeah.
Well, we're hoping that the results are going to be the same across the state, and that we are going to be allowed by the state next year to expand this model. But I want to thank you so much for being our guinea pig and testing it in your classroom this year.
My pleasure.
And gosh, Kim, it's been delightful talking to you. You're such an inspiring teacher. And I want to thank you so much for coming by today.
Well, thank you. And I truly am just blessed to be here and to be here in Iredell-Statesville schools and work with the children and the staff that we have here in our district, and particularly, of course, at Lakeshore Middle School. It's a wonderful place to be.
It is a wonderful place.
Yes,
well,
it is.
Thank you again, Kim.
Thank you very much.
And folks, thank you for tuning in today. It is such an honor and privilege to introduce some of our outstanding educators to the community. And we hope you have enjoyed the broadcast. Thanks again for tuning in.